just bless and help us today. We just thank you for your, two or three gather and you're present in the midst. And that's just a promise that is like amazing to us, God. You are in us and then you're among us, God. And just how does that happen? But that's your miracle. We thank you for that, God, that you give us life for each other in the body of Christ. And it's just amazing. Maybe just we just pray for, Argentina, Ohio, Switzerland, Uganda, Florida, God. Just we got pastors here and just leaving their works behind to be here for a week or so. And we ask you to bless and cover because we know things can happen. And we pray you would help. And that, in a sense, our pastors would go back to things better than they left them because you move. So we pray for that. And just lead us this morning. We pray in your name. Amen. Pastor Ambaraz, up to you. You might do better on this side than that side, and just in terms of where my attention is and where the board is, but totally up. Sit wherever you want to sit. I know sometimes you want to plug these machines in, So we had a good time last night, and as I said, I'm sort of teaching this course for the first time, so I've got a lot of content, but I'm not totally happy with the way it's been organized. But I thought maybe I could summarize in a way that would be helpful and maybe clear some some of the chaos that was created last night away. So here's how it goes. The way I'm thinking about it is the ministry does start with a man, you know what I'm saying? And he's got a message and he's got a calling or a vision, right? When he has 5 people in a Bible study, right? There's not a whole lot of organizational issues that we're dealing with, all right? You're loving people, you're in somebody's home. There's not a lot to talk about. But as the ministry grows, right? So it's going to be like our growth box here, all right? And we go through growth. Now we got people. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 15, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 30. I can't draw a hard and fast line because there isn't one. Just issues arise. And those issues can be pastoral, right? Or they can be what I would call like maybe business issues. Maybe that's not the best way to say it, but that's the word we're going to use. Now, the pastoral issues, right? Maybe like church discipline, you know what I'm saying? You start to have problems in the church. Who's going to be responsible for that? Who's the bottom line for dealing with that? Recently, we asked a guy not to come to church anymore. We've done that probably 3 times in 10 years that I'm aware of. It's a huge decision. That's very grave when you ask someone not to come to church anymore or for a season. Are we going to, you're going to perform a wedding? You know what I'm saying? Well, when there's 5 people in a Bible study and you're going to marry 2 of them, everybody knows everything that's going on because we're friends and we're family. As the church grows, you might have situations where, and that would apply to asking someone not to come anymore also. Like all of a sudden someone's not in church. Well, people don't know the situation because we don't talk, and you got 30 people in the church, and 20 of them don't know what's going on. So someone's like booted out of the church. Well, that traumatizes people. Where is so-and-so? Well, we ask them not to come anymore. Why? And they may be friends, but not know the situation, or we love each other. So that's the type of pastoral issues that arise. Maybe I could come up with more if I were to think about it. And so on the pastoral side, who is making those decisions? Well, who made the decision this guy couldn't come to church anymore? Who decided we were going to marry these people? Did you know this about this person, right? In the old days, in wedding ceremonies, does anybody here have a reason why these two shouldn't be married? Speak now or forever hold your peace, because we're about to exchange vows and it's too late. But there might be someone in that congregation that knows something. I'm not saying we do that, but there's a principle there that I think is valid. And then, like over on the business side, issues start to arise there also. We talked about those, but just you're taking, people are tithing now. You got 20 people, they're starting to give offerings. You got, people with good incomes and they're throwing in hundreds of dollars a week. Who's responsible for that? Are we going to lease a building now? Who's going to sign that lease? Are we going to buy sound equipment? Who owns it? Who makes the decision? Who can sell it? All that type of stuff. And this is where it gets a little bit of, but you'll like this, okay? So we can either do it like with, wish this board were a little bit bigger, but we can either do it with like one-man rule, okay? Okay, or we can do it with a team decision, right? So these decisions can be made like either way, all right? So everybody getting this diagram? I'm so happy with this. I just made this up this morning to try and clear the air a little bit, Now, I'm saying if you're looking for scriptural support or evidence or backup that says that one-man rule is the way to go, I'm saying you're going to find that type of evidence more in the Old Testament than in the New Testament. That's my opinion, but I am teaching the course. That's what I see, okay? If you're looking for evidence of team decision-making, you're going to find more of that in the New Testament, all right? Now, again, I said last night, I'm saying it again, the Bible does not give us, Ged, what's that thermostat set at? I don't know if you guys, are you guys cold out there? Because I'm starting to, what's that say?
68.
Okay, we'll leave it at 68. So that air should go off in a second, get me out of the hot air blast. So I said that the Bible does not give us a clear, concise blueprint about how to set our organizations up, all right? There's evidence there that we see, but in a sense, we're sort of left, and I think maybe God did it that way on purpose. I could speculate because he wants us to be spiritual. You know what I'm saying? I think he wants to be leading people. I think he wants us coming together in unity. And I think maybe he's left some of this at some level to, in a sense, figure out for ourselves because there's a growth process in it that is painful and also healthy. You know what I'm saying? Submit yourselves one to another. Well, who do I submit to? Well, you submit, so that's how I'm thinking about it. So that the way that we sort of organize our churches, I think, is based on biblical evidence, but also it's practical and what works, all right? Nobody likes leadership by committee, okay? Nobody likes that because it does not work well, all right? There needs to be a final word, there can be discussion, there can be counsel, but there needs to be decisions and leadership and definition and how are we following going forward, okay? But the other side of it is that most of us, and I'm not, and again, I just got to disclaim this by saying that, Baltimore is not the organizational police, okay? We are not running around the world, going into churches, seeing what's happening, and telling you to do it differently, okay? So there's plenty of room there in terms of how different churches organize themselves. But also, we see the problems that can arise when the organization goes a certain way, and that's why we teach and recommend what we do. Okay, everybody with me on that? I'm just going to turn this off for 1 second. I'm going to mute this. He ends up in a situation where, is he fundraising for himself or for the church? You know what I'm saying? It's a very difficult situation. And people are being asked for money, and they know it's going back to him. And I think what he did is totally, maybe it wasn't above board in the sense that everybody knew about it, but spiritually I have no problem with it. Like, I get it. I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to make the church go. He saw an opportunity. He had the means to do it, and he did it. Thank God for that. It's a beautiful thing. His heart is perfect. I think there'll be rewards in heaven for the way he's conducting himself. But on earth, you bump into trouble because, again, what I said yesterday, does his own conscience bother him? I'm saying, geez, I'm kind of fundraising for myself. And then on the other side of it, for people that are being asked to give, because, we've gotten a letter from them, like, hey, we're doing that, we want to raise some money, and we're very sympathetic. But, geez, what? It just causes, these questions arise. It would have been better to do it differently, okay? And I think most of us would agree that it would. So how if we set up this team, how does it work? All right, we would say, and I think this is absolutely scriptural, that we're going to have the spiritual people in the church, namely the elders in the church, ultimately in charge of what happens. Okay, so you've got a pastor who is the leader. He is the most prominent member. He has the ability to sway the elders through his leadership, through his investment, and in a sense, we're always going to, not always, but we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt because we are counting on him to exercise his ministry and lead us forward. But he doesn't have supreme rule. He cannot get whatever he wants the way we tend to set our churches up. I told you Pastor Schaller is one vote on a board of 11. There's tremendous protections for him in terms of to remove a pastor is not easy the way we set it up. And that's, Pastor Bob, you were talking about your appeals board. We have an appeals board. Like, we do not have the power alone in Greater Grace World Outreach in Baltimore to remove Pastor Schaller. There's an outside group that goes to before that decision can be made. So there's great protection there for him, but there is not, unfettered rule. Okay, so so you've got this team. They may maybe you got this, and that's the elders are the supreme authority in the church. Now there are Greater Grace churches that we could do it differently, and maybe we will. Because we're still growing, and we hope growing, learning in this thing. But there are churches, I'm aware of one church where they've got a smaller board of elders. I don't know how big it is, whether it's 5 or, what it is. And the pastor has 2 votes, not 1. So when he casts his ballot, it's 2. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that's wrong. I think maybe it's good and appropriate. Maybe that makes sense. But what I'm putting in front of you is to make this thing work the right way. The Bible hasn't given us a blueprint. It's given us principles. And the second thing is we're aware of the dynamics, maybe the inherent tension, and we do the best we can. All right? There's no set of bylaws or rules in the world that's going to guarantee a spiritual or outcome, right? You can do it any way you want to, and it might not come out right, all right? You might get a pastor who is hearing from God and doing everything right, and things go south, and he gets booted out. You might have a pastor who is a tyrant and exercising undue authority, and there's no one to stop him. We do the best we can with it, all right? So the way we set it up, there's elders. Some, they're gonna delegate stuff off, organizationally. We've, the way we do it here, we have, what do we call them, trustees. Maybe some churches call them deacons, whatever they are. And they're they get they're delegated the business end of the church. I didn't use the right terminology there. They're delegated the business of the church, but the elders have the ultimate. They can veto the decisions of the trustees. All right. You've got the pastor, who is really, he's the head of the organization. That's the pastor right there. That's the way we do it, and he is the president of the company, in the sense, chief executive officer. Day in and day out, he is running the church. The staff reports to him, doesn't report to the elders, but ultimately, of course, he's sitting up on this board of elders also. He's up there, he's one of this group and the most prominent one. And the elders have, trustees can there's things the trustees could do, there's things the elders could do to steer this, you know what I'm saying? Especially with a church with money and payroll and a budget, the trustees could start, doing things to limit, how things go, and that's kind of exactly how it works right now, not in the sense that our hardest to limit, our hardest to support, but we make a lot of decisions. And then even over on the pastoral side, I think it's a little bit cumbersome right now, and we might change it, but but we've got, I mentioned, in terms of, booting someone out of the church. That's one example. If we're going to marry someone, that's another example. If we're going to ordain somebody, right? If we're going to send out missionaries, all right? Those decisions are being made up at the elders level, okay? Although it's in terms of full disclosure, and there are times when we ask people not to come to the church, and that does not get to the elders, all right? Sometimes that's made on this level. So just to tell you how it goes, but it's a big decision. And if the elders call the pastor and say, what's going on with this guy, I think they have every right to ask that, because when people are in that situation, they'll go from person to person looking for support. I totally understand that. We're human, that's how it goes, and it'll eventually get back from that person to another body member, and then they'll ask somebody on the board of elders what's going on here. And if that guy gets blindsided, it's a bad situation. So maybe we can do that a little bit better than we're doing it right now. But these are the guys, and the way Pastor Stevens, going back ages ago, decades ago, there was all the talk about plurality of elders, and originally the term meant, the way it was being used is, you've got a bunch of, you don't have one person, who is leading the church. You have, so you end up, down at this level with a committee meeting, that type of thing. And we don't agree with that type of leadership, but the way Pastor Stevens formulated it was this, is we do believe in plurality of elders, but we don't believe in equality of elders. That's the way he formulated it, which I think is a good answer. And how you set that up and work it out, that's what we're talking about. There's no right way, no wrong way. Let's get the microphone going. And I'm very glad to hear from anybody here, so send that on over to Pastor.
So is what we're talking about here basically the difference between government and leadership? Like that in the government of the church is with the pastor is the presiding elder is one of the guys, but then actually like in the leadership he's the point guy, but as far as the actual like making rules and deciding on these things, it's the
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think that's very well said. All right. So maybe this is the government. The word I would use down here is, I would call this the operation, but maybe that's sort of a secular term. But I think you're making a very good distinction there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like that, you have the pastor at the point of the pyramid there.
Yeah.
So this is like operations, or
Right.
and him as the spiritual leader of the.
Yeah.
But it's not the guy. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's very,
Okay.
very. Thank you for that. Okay. Yeah. Very, very well said there. Okay. So, is everybody like with me? Does anybody want me to stop here and explain it? I know these are can be like weighty issues. Anybody want to stop here and say anything? I guess more our credit students, but are we okay to go on? Anybody else want to say something? I really value the input I'm getting, the stuff that's being said in class, and then the conversations that happen during the breaks are like amazing, and some of them are public and some of them are not public. But all this stuff is like, I really want to present ourselves, and partly because I want, go ahead, Pastor Ken. Let's get the mic back to him. I know it's a little bit, but let's get this mic going just so we can.
I just wanted to get your opinion. With the moving over from a one-man rule over to this team, of course,
right.
That I think is the main goal. Sometimes in a church like Miami, where there is no team and
yes.
everybody is that becomes a harder task.
Amen.
So because we tried it and
right.
it just bombed.
Yeah.
I set up elders or deacons.
Right.
And these were spiritual men, and I'm not questioning that about them.
Right.
And their love for God. But also they weren't greater grace.
Yes.
And that became a problem.
Yeah.
With soul winning and outreach, I said, so it caused problems, and I had to kick them out, and so I just say, be careful on who you
Amen.
pick
Yes,
because
absolutely.
It can cause a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And and again, this is just me. I hate that word business in the church. I mean, that's just me. Because this is what they brought up. We need to run this like a business. Well, it's not a business, but I understand where you're going on that, but it's the closest thing that we can get because there are church things that have to be done and, so just that. So
no, that's great.
Comment on that,
and,
please.
And then going back to that list of things, like where we get our source, why do we teach what we teach? I've become aware of the issues with small churches, which really the majority of our churches are. And I think probably the majority of our churches around the world are right where you're talking about, is like, do we have, the bodies to set this up a certain way? And so you just end up with what can work, what are the practical considerations? But if we are trained as pastors and know these principles and know the pitfalls, right, that can perhaps protect us and save us from falling into the traps that can exist because we don't have everything in place the way it should be, And then when someone comes to you and questions you, you have an answer for them, like, yes, you are right. Ideally, that would be the way it would be. I'm doing the best I can with the people I have. Pastor Bob pulled me aside and during a break yesterday, and he gave me a very similar story that you gave. Like he put people into positions and they got destroyed, right? In some cases, left the church. And this is the dilemma, right? We don't want to lay hands too quickly on people. And of course, we're in the business of raising people up, right? We're in the business of taking people and putting them in a place that they are maybe not demonstrated competent to take, but they grow into it. That's how it goes. But when you do that on this level, right? It's not like you put someone in charge of your outreach and then, hey, it's not working out, we get someone else there. You put this guy here and it's not working out. Well, now you got to vote people off how do you even remove them? I'm saying, do you have a mechanism to do that? And it's just, it becomes difficult. And if it was easy, we wouldn't need you guys. So here we are, This is why we're doing it. So let's, and then the other thing, guys, is like, the way I'm presenting myself is like I'm very open to hearing, learning, being corrected, making adjustments. We're teaching this for the first time, maybe the last time, but I'll continue to teach in the Bible college. And as I get this input, we're just adding to the body of knowledge. These classes do go around the world. They really do. They're watching them in India. The Bible college classes and other places also besides India. But maybe China, they're watching them. I think maybe Pastor Mike mentioned it. Maybe you're not aware of that, but people have watched these classes. So I just know what we're saying is like weighty, and we want to do it right. And then the other thing is I kind of like, because I want to teach us as leaders to listen, I got to model that. I got to be listening to you. Like if I come in and run this class like I know it all, that's training you to go out and be know-it-alls. You know what I'm saying? And we're not. Okay, so that's how it goes here. So we're going to take this off the board now, unless somebody else has something. Okay. All right, let's get rid of this. Okay, now, where are we going here? Okay. Okay. So, here's the thing, is that pastors are people too, all right? You've got a guy who has tremendous responsibility, right? He's up here trying to exercise this responsibility. And who are the people who can come around and help him? And every pastor is going to find that somewhere, all right? If I were pastoring a church, I'm going to find friends who can be a friend to me. I'm going to find that somewhere. And what can happen just in terms of the dynamics of it is like those friends will become an influence on me, all right? That I got a handful of people that I'm close to, and I talk to them because I got to talk to somebody, all right? And those people that are right around me are going to have influence on me because I will talk to them, and their opinion will matter to me, all right? Their opinion, because we are people, all right? And knowing that the people closest to me are going to know about what I'm doing and might have some input on it, that will affect me because we are like social beings here, all right? I've got, of course, in my family, I'm married. I've got 2 children, all right? They're adults. They have opinions. Like, I care about them, you know what I'm saying? And decisions, but there's responsibility also. If they're out in the street, I'm probably going to take them in. And if I'm on the street, they're probably going to take me in. So it's not just like, they're not just friends, but there's responsibility and accountability right there. And so when I talk about what I'm doing, all right, they will have input for me. Like my husband, my wife will talk to me, my children talk to me. Dad, I don't think that's a good idea. Anytime, I don't know if you gentlemen travel, but when we travel, right, our family cares about us, right? And when we go to an opposite side of the world, I was overseas, trip to China and Thailand. There can be an attack there. That fear can come in. You know what I'm saying? What will happen if the plane goes down? That type of thing. And so that's just one example in a family, and that will influence it. And if my wife were, when she says please don't, which she didn't say please don't go, she didn't say that. But if my wife were to say please don't go, it's like that's now I got something to overcome to hop on a plane and go to an opposite side of the world. Like, okay, it's like what's behind that? You know what I'm saying? Is the voice of God in this thing? Like, is this person wise and giving me counsel that's from God? Or is this a person that I just need to run over because God's leading me and I can't, I'm not run over, but you know what I'm saying, just like set that aside, say I'm going to do it anyway, all right? And this is what happens. There are vocal people in a church. And leaders know this, and we're all leaders at some level. Most of us are leaders at some level. There's vocal people in a church, and someone has made their opinion known. And if I make this decision, I know so-and-so is not going to like it, all right? We're people, that stuff comes into our mind. Okay, so the people that are around me, the people that I have close to me, the people that I'm sharing this stuff with, and I'm gonna have them because I'm a person and I need it, I have to be aware that they're you know, if they support me all the time, no matter what I say, no problem, go for it, there's a problem there also. You know what I'm saying? Because, okay, that person's not, in a sense, it's very edifying. In another sense, it's not helping me. You know what I'm saying? Because they may support me in something I'm doing that's very, very stupid. You know, that's dumb, and they know it. And they're close to me, and they probably know me better than myself, and maybe they've got some wisdom that will help me. All right, everybody see this? And this is just human nature. This is how it goes. So so we got the pastor, right? And, all right. And he is, in some sense, he is the ministry, you know, because if, and we're going to talk about that some more. And he's probably making the biggest sacrifice. And he's going to have people around him, all right, who are his friends. Now, he's always going to have his family, right, with his wife. But they're not part of the organization, all right? They're a, and we're going to talk about that phenomenon in a day or two also. But he's going to have some people around him. And I would say, ideally, and we don't live in an ideal world, but ideally, the people that he has, like godly, spiritual pastors / elders around him, and when push comes to shove, these are the people he's talking to and getting counsel from, because hopefully they have the wisdom and the discernment to be giving him good counsel. And then, but these whoever these people are, they're going to become more than just a vote in the board. They're going to become friends to him, confidants of him, because that is human nature. All right, and in a sense, we wouldn't want it any other way, right? You know, Pastor Ken, you rightfully so, you know, made a comment about the word business. You know what I'm saying? I understand that. All right. The way I say it is this way: a church is a business and it's a ministry. All right? If the business isn't working, the church isn't going to last very long. If the ministry isn't working, you know, we're going to leave and go find a ministry that is working, because while we conduct the business of it. All right? So, so if these relationships are reduced to we walk into a board meeting, cast a vote, and walk out, nobody wants to live in that world. All right? That's an inhuman, unlivable situation. Who wants to go to that meeting? You know, so that because we're people, there has to be unity. So these people, who's ever around the pastor, and hopefully if we can get there, it's a defined board of elders. They're going to give this man counsel. Okay, they're going to give him support. They're going to give him covering. All right, they're going to provide unity and like a safe place for us to go. Right, because I know I'm going to be with spiritual people. I'm not going to be attacked in this room. I'm not going to get, well-meaning people making comments that I got to cast aside because they're not helping me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to have people making a big issue about the color that we paint the chapel. You know what I'm saying? That's we're gonna be, you know, talk about real issues, important stuff, and godly people will be doing it. These people protect him, and I'm just saying our goal is that we would embrace and be comfortable with this type of leadership, you know. And where do we get it from? Like, you know, Pastor Ken, you're in a situation. I think most of our pastors, at least I think maybe Pastor Sam. I don't totally understand, but I think there's just a lot more people in Uganda. I don't know how many churches are there in Uganda.
About 40.
40 churches. Okay, so you got a lot going on there. There's just a lot of people, and I'm saying that you have kind of at your fingertips godly men who you trust and are really qualified. You know what I'm saying? And if you were to if you weren't able to make it back to see your wife, like the plane goes down or something, that there's people that can step into that role and things would go forward, you know? I don't know if Florida's in that situation. I doubt it is. If Pastor Ken were to disappear, we're in a different situation. So just as the ministry grows, more and more of these people exist, and you're able to get more from the, you know, how are we going to survive the day until more of an ideal situation. So to me, and we'll talk about this again, this is one of the what I would say is the blessings of affiliation, is we have people, maybe these resources do not exist in my local assembly, but we've got people out there that we can talk to that can help us, all right, and maybe we'll get back to that. But I'm going to use this word right now. And I'm not sure this is the best place to say it, but everybody knows this word, genius, right? And you can refer it to can talk about a very smart person, like Albert Einstein was a genius. It has another definition also, and it goes like this, which is the prevalent character or spirit of something, such as a nation or age, okay? The prevalent character or spirit of something, such as a nation or age, all right? And I would say the question that's, the way I put it this way, the question before us, I don't mean to word it that way, but the question before us today is like, what is the genius of Greater Grace World Outreach? Like, what makes us what we are, all right? And we could talk about that, like body life, which I think that we have an understanding of it. And you could answer this question as well as I could, but body life would be one of them. Like world vision would be another one. I would think, confrontational, contact, whatever you want to call it, evangelism, going to people for the express purpose, and new contacts as well as going to acquaintances that we have. I would say the whole counsel of God is another one. We hopefully are teaching everything, and some churches get in trouble not because of what they say, but because of what they don't say. You know what I'm saying? They leave certain parts of the message out. So we want to preach that whole counsel. But the other part of what I would say the genius of Greater Grace World Outreach is this. It's sort of maybe part of body life, but it's on a different level, is that we have, in our local assemblies and in our, also in our affiliation, we as leaders have contact with people and cultivate those relationships so that there are people here to help us, all right? I believe that our pastors here are on the phone with people because they know that these relationships are vital and we need to maintain them. We don't send missionaries out, send them a check every month. They come back once a year with a dog and pony show to raise more money and then go back by themselves. That's not how we do it, all right? You wouldn't be happy with it. I wouldn't be happy with it. It's like, because the relationship is the key, all right? This may come up again, but I'm going to say it now while we're on it, just because it's coming to my mind. I'm not sure I covered it elsewhere, but there were when Pastor Stevens left the scene in whatever year that 2005, 4 or 5, in that range right there. That happened because he was no longer capable of running the ministry. His faculties, his abilities were waning. And he just could not do it. He could not offer the leadership he'd been able to offer. And of course, combined with physical problems, he couldn't even physically be here the majority of the time. There were churches who were unhappy with the relational nature of our ministry. Okay, I'm going to say that again. They were unhappy with the relational nature of our ministry. And there were meetings, some I was present, most I was not present at, and alternative ways of organizing Greater Grace World Outreach were proposed. And one sort of guy, I was not present, this is what was quoted to me, I could be wrong, but I'm going to say it because just to illustrate the principle. One guy, prominent guy from another place, at one of these meetings, the proposal went like this. So, that we would set up an organization that would mean, if we set it up this way, we don't need these relationships anymore. And that was he wanted to get away from the relational nature of it and set up an organization that was purely an organization without the relationships, okay? We understand why that proposal was made, but when that statement gets made, I think everybody in this room has the same reaction and response to it that I do. Like, you're kidding me? I'm going to work with and be responsible for a bunch of people that we don't need a friendship with them to make it work. I mean, who wants to be part of that? There's a balance to that, and we'll get to that in the next few days also, as we talk about organizations. But this is part of the genius of Greater Grace World Outreach, right? We don't want to be out there on our own. Like, well, that would be like no fun, I'm going to go somewhere and it's like I'm on my own. I'm going to do this thing by myself. Years ago, when I spent a month in West Africa, and we would meet missionaries there. Maybe you've met some of these missionaries out there. Maybe we've been those missionaries. But we've met these people, and we talk to them about team concept and how we do things, and their answer is, oh my God, I would love that. I don't have it. And in West Africa, I was in a Muslim country. People get out there. There's horror stories. They're out there by themselves, or them and their wife. Things don't go well. They get overcome by the demons that are in that area, whether or not they define it that way. And Christian missionaries go, and I'm not saying this happens all the time. It happens very rarely, but it has happened that people go to these places and they have converted to Islam after being there for a season. That has happened, all right? In Thailand, you've got a very sensual, wicked society. Missionaries go there, and I'm told in some cases they've entered into that sensuality and accepted that as a lifestyle. This is what can happen, and that's the genius. One of the genii of Greater Grace World Outreach is that we understand this, we cling to each other, and we've got someone on the phone, someone who knows what's going on in my life. I can talk to that person, and part of that's organization, but it goes beyond organization into a life and a flow. And I know my need, right, for that type of input, but I also know the need of other people who need that input from me, so we work on these relationships, right? And this is how I say it. I've got, this goes around the world. I've got 3 brothers, okay? One calls me once in a while. The other 2 don't call me, all right? So what do I do with that? What do I do with that? Do I start thinking something bad about them? They haven't called me. Why is that? Do I start analyzing it? Thinking I'm better than them? Thinking what's wrong with them? Do I call them up and say, why haven't you called me? Like, I never make that statement. I call them. I take responsibility to maintain the relationship instead of wondering why somebody else isn't doing that. That's how we do it in Greater Grace World Outreach, and that's how it is, all right? We take on that responsibility. Led by God, we take on that responsibility, okay? And this is where we are, and that comes right back. We got to have people around that pastor who can support him, be his friend, in some ways be his confidant without being a yes man. And if he's got elders, that's the best. All right? If he's got elders who can fulfill that role, that is the best. He's going to get it somewhere. he doesn't get it from elders, he's going to get it from people in his church. I don't know where it's going to come from. I think some of our pastors have done very well in their local area by getting with other, like churches in that, with other non-Greater Grace pastors, all right? And they have done well with that because they've found godly spiritual men who they get together and pray with. I don't think many are doing that, but some are. And I just say, like, thank God that I'm like happy about that they're finding that type of fellowship because we all need it. Am I recommending it? I'm not recommending it. I'm not recommending it. I'm saying you're going to be led by God in that because I know there can be pitfalls with that type of thing also. Okay, so spiritual leadership is not and never has been a democracy. Okay, but when we start setting up, especially when you set up a legal organization, you got to have some form there, and we do end up with, with our boards of elders, we end up with votes. So in a sense, it is a democracy, with some of those principles, and it's the best we can do. I don't know, ideally, hopefully we're coming together and praying, talking to each other, having a discussion, and then the vote simply represents, a consensus that's from God. Okay, get this mic back over here. And Pastor Stan, I'm going to have you hold that question. Don't forget it. But just while I'm on this subject, but I would say, and this is Peter Taggart saying it, if you always on your boards, if you, always have unanimous votes. Of course, it depends how much you're meeting and the type of issues you're discussing. But if the votes are always unanimous, I would say, are you having real discussion? Like, what's really, why, how can you be in 100% agreement all the time? But if there's always split votes, like it's, you're, a bunch of 6-5 votes and that's going on, you've got a problem because there's a program going on that people are not agreeing with. Like, why is that? What's happening? It's either bad leadership from the pastor or people that just are not on board, and you got to do something about that also because no one wants to live in that,
Yeah, that's actually one thing I was going to say was that when we were in Peru, one of the LambCons that we had, Pastor Gary Grenwald was there. I think it was 2014, and he was saying, he was talking with me and the elders that we had there, the pastors, and just about this issue of like, how do you have, when you have a meeting and things are presented, that it's not, it shouldn't be maybe like that the pastor just says, like, all right, this is what I want to do, what do you guys think? Because he's not actually, they don't really feel free to really say what they think, because he's already basically said, this is what I want to do. But he's not really taking advantage of the fact that they have a spiritual walk with God too.
So then the question becomes, are you for me or against me? You know what I'm saying? And who wants to have that discussion?
Right, and then and then it's because I know of a situation where a Greater Grace pastor or former Greater Grace pastor basically started playing the conspiracy card.
Right.
And any time that anyone would say anything, then he would just no one can say anything because you're a conspirator.
Yep. Yep. And at the same time, as Pastor Ken was saying, you get the wrong people on the board, you end up with that. People that are not equipped for that battle. Right. You know what I'm saying? And so it's, if you want to keep going, or you're done there.
Oh, well, I guess that's basically, I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was a very, very good spiritual point, that how we would run the meeting, that the leader would feel secure enough in his spiritual walk with God that he could actually allow people to really say what they think, and then how, as you said, like have a real vote, and instead of like everybody just saying like Sure, Pastor. I mean,
Yeah. No, I was in a church once. I don't want to say what country it was in, but they were going through some difficulties, and I was invited somebody else to come up there and just sit in on what was happening. And I walked into a supposed, board of elders meeting, and there wasn't a platform, but the elders are sitting at a table, right? The elders are around a table, and the pastor has a pulpit there, and he's conducting his meeting from the pulpit, talking to his elders. I'm saying, oh my God, that is horrific. You know what I'm saying? That you're saying by your body, I mean, you're putting them in the position where they have to go against the pulpit now. Like this is how you stand every Sunday with your Bible open, preaching things from heaven, and now you're going to conduct this meeting this way. I was like shocked and horrified. We'll probably get back to that also, but maybe not. So anything else before it's not the next topic, but we're going to go into something that, this next thing, I think you're going to like it. I think it's valuable. And again, this is just fresh material that I've been trying to develop because I just don't want to repeat stuff from my previous course. How's everybody doing? Okay? We all right here? I think we're probably going to go maybe another 15 or 20 more minutes, and then we'll probably take like a half an hour-ish break. The cafe will be open, and so you can grab something. Then we'll sit in on a little bit of our staff meeting here, if it's happening, which I believe it is, which will just, if you've never been to one, it'll give you some of the flavor of how that goes. Basically, our staff meetings are free for all. It's a little bit chaotic in there. Okay, so here we go. Now, this next thing I'm going to say, I think is important, which is why I'm saying it. But to put it this way, like here we are, we're at home base. There's people around the world looking to us for leadership. We teach the course a certain way. We talk a certain way, and that some of that just comes from our experiences here and how things go. I've never really lived overseas, although I've traveled a little bit and seen some things. But in Europe, maybe not so much, but definitely the United States. In Western countries, it's like really like very interesting. We have religious freedom. We have a Christian culture, right? Where 70% of Americans think of themselves as Christians. And number 3, we have material plenty. We got a lot here. It's an amazing place to live, along with Western Europe, amazing place to live. All right? So I've told this story before, but maybe not in the class. There's a guy, Richard Konda. He was a refugee from Congo. All right? And, and this was the time of the whole Hutus, Tutsis, that whole thing, just some of the horrific stuff that happened there. And he's like, and so like the genocide, like the sounds of genocide can be heard in this city. And he's like getting on the last train out of the city that's going before, and if he misses this train, it's going to be bad. And he ended up, I don't know, there's maybe to South Africa in a refugee camp. He ended up in the United States, and I haven't spoken to him in some years, but became a friend of mine. They attended this church for a while. So, one day, Richard, my perception is that African people pray in a way that Americans do not pray. Like, tell me why this is so meaningful to you, all right? This was his answer, right? In Africa, if you get sick and you don't pray, you're going to die, all right? In Africa, if you plant your crops and you don't pray, they're not going to grow, and you're going to starve to death, all right? So these people are living in a place where they need God day to day in a way that is like unimaginable to me. I can't even relate to that. Like, I don't even think about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? I don't even think about it. Like, how many times in my life have I honestly not had a meal because of lack of money? And that's like never. That's never happened to me. You know, as a child, was I ever aware that there was any? No, the food's there 3 times a day. The roof's over your head. You don't even think about it. As an adult, you become a little more aware of it. But we know that push comes to shove, there's going to be a provision out there for you. You know, so that the needs are not there, right? So that gives me a ton of freedom. You know what I'm saying? Because I can relocate. That's the other thing. You know, the great American thing: pack up and move. That's saying we get the frontier. You know what I'm saying? We start over again in this country in ways that other people cannot. We have economic, geographical mobility because of economic provision. All right, we can move. We can up and go. All right. Maybe the fourth, religious freedom. There's not pressure on us. All right. I'm not facing stuff. I'm free. I'm not being persecuted in my neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? The police are not at the door of this church. You know, I'm not living in that like they could be in certain places in the world, you know? So that gives Westerners, maybe Americans in particular, Westerners freedom, like, just in the way we think. You know what I'm saying? I'm in a church here, but there's a church across the town that I can go to. And then also our view of success, right? Like this is what we do here. We build businesses. We make things bigger. This is what we do, all right? So here I am in a church. Things get a little bit, there's a church across the street or 2 miles away where maybe the grass is a little bit greener, right? Maybe I'm being challenged here. Maybe I'm not. And you know what? Hey, I think I'm going to start going to that church. And why would I do it? Because 9 times out of 10, it's because I'm attracted to the preaching of that pastor. You know what I'm saying? And I love great preaching. You know what I'm saying? I listen to the radio. I love Ravi Zacharias, Chuck Swindoll. These people are like amazing, amazing preachers. So we have options. And I think what that has sort of produced in our churches, and I don't think Greater Grace is immune to it, although I think we do a lot better. I think that creates what I would call like the phenomenon of like the celebrity pastor, all right? And church growth happens in the United States. I don't know the exact statistic, but the vast majority of church growth in the United States is not people being, soul winning, people becoming born again. It's people moving from one church to another, all right? And it happens here. I mean, people will come here and we're glad about it, and we're kind of excited sometimes. And it depends how we talk about it. But, they were going to that church. They came here. They like the preaching better. Isn't this great? We're like a better church. We can talk that way. So I don't think we do it very often, but we can talk that way, And so because of that, when the pastor changes, right? We're going to lose our pastor and a new pastor comes into place. Maybe there's a trauma or a difficulty that occurs here that might not happen in other parts of the world where there's just a different thing going on, you know what I'm saying, in terms of how it goes. If you're in some house church somewhere and we are, praying every day for our daily bread and that the police won't find us and throw us in jail, right? And then, and we are like godly people living that way, counting on each other. And then you have a guy who's pastoring the church and he like makes a move. Well, we already have the essential of it in place, that we are caring about each other. We have a godly fellowship. We don't have time for foolishness because we're just trying to survive day to day, and hanging on to God. And that maybe we're better equipped because we're more spiritual when the pastor moves and, oh my God, what will happen? I don't like this new guy's preaching anymore. Maybe it goes that way. So I could be wrong about that. Anybody have a comment on that? Like, yes, Pastor Tager, or you're all, that's crazy, don't ever say that again. Anybody have a comment?
Pastor Tager?
No, go ahead, Andy. Let's get the microphone back to Andy. Let's send.
Just to clarify,
Yeah.
You're saying a smaller group would handle that situation better.
I'm saying a group that is more spiritual, all right? because they have to be to survive, because they're not living in a Christian society, the land of plenty where there's no spiritual pressure in some ways, you know what I'm saying, that they might be better equipped for a change of pastor than we are here. You know what I'm saying? And we saw it. It was a big issue when Pastor Stevens left, who's going to be the pastor here. And there were reasons for that. Some of it was natural, some of it was, you know, there was reasons for that. Maybe we're not going to talk about that, but maybe it could have been different, you know, or in a different part of the world it would be different. So, yes, sir. And let's get the microphone.
In Geneva, it's interesting because it's Calvin City historically. So most of Switzerland is largely Catholic, certainly the German-speaking part. But you mentioned about people moving, and we could observe the same in Geneva because it's a pocket of Protestantism,
Right.
with a large number of evangelical churches in a small place. So we see, like, people will do the rounds of churches. They will go from one church to another,
Right.
then to another, then to another. So we do see like that happening, and they're trying out different churches to see if they like it. So it's a phenomenon that's
Yeah.
common for us as well.
Yeah, and I also, just going back to this word genius, I think maybe that's part of the genius. I could add another thing there of Greater Grace World Outreach. Is not just body life, but that's related to the whole concept of the local assembly. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, do we value it? You know, am I called here? Like, is it, did God put me here, or do I have all these options? And of course, we always have options. You know, you're big boys and girls. God will lead you. You go where God leads you to go. But for me to change my local assembly, of course, there's other Greater Grace churches, but I don't want to be in a place that does not have what this place provides for me, which is, you know, body life, the whole counsel of God, world vision. You know, I'm challenged here. You know, so I'm not looking for a church where I'm comfortable. I'm looking for a church where I'm uncomfortable, where I'm comfortable in my uncomfortability because I'm being challenged to go forward. And if every time there's a challenge, I pack up and go somewhere else, and there's no if I go to a church, go in there on Sunday morning, listen to the message, and then shake some hands on the way out and go home, and that's my relationship with my church, where is the accountability in that? You know what I'm saying? You know, where's the exposure of my life to people who maybe can say something to me that'll help me? You know, where is that? And that's why we value it, and that's why Pastor Stevens was very strong on it. And even though I don't think Pastor Schaller preaches it as strong as Pastor Stevens did, I think that the principle remains. Okay, so that's what I'm saying now. That's sort of the concept of the celebrity pastor. Now, does that mean, even though we don't have like the wrong type of attachment to our pastor, is there a right type of attachment, and where does that come from? Okay? So, and this is kind of new, and this may not come out as well as I want to say it, but like Paul, I was just reading this letter to Galatians. And it's just like very, very interesting. Now, of course, Galatians was not one church. It was a number of churches, all right? But he's addressing the churches. He's not so much addressing the pastors of the churches, but he's addressing the churches, right? And he goes up, you know, this, "Oh, foolish Galatians, like, who has bewitched you? Like, why have you, as a body or as a people or as an assembly, why are you entertaining other types of messages?" All right? And he appeals not just to doctrine, but he appeals to their relationship with him. Like, I have taught you a certain way, right? So he's holding them accountable to pass on his message, all right? And so this relationship, like this relationship, that knowledge, it does matter, okay? And so there's an approach to leadership that it's doctrinal, but it is personal, and there is an accountability there. And so I think there is a love attachment. You know, this person's been part of my life. Is it a sentimental attachment? No, it's a real attachment because of what this person has done for me. Like I love my dad. My dad passed away a couple of years ago, but I loved him. What was that, just sentimental? Like I missed him? No, he was a person in my life, and I'm not going to lose that, and I have great value for him. So that's part of it. The next source of authority would be preaching the truth. Like truth has authority. So we're preaching the truth. So there's an attachment with the pastor. There's the truth he preaches. All right. There is his position in the church, which is important, or position in the churches in the case of someone who is a church planter. And then finally, there is a source of life there. All right. And these are the reasons why we're going to, why that I've come up with, and maybe this could be better formulated, but there's a reason why we're in the churches we're in. And if I'm in a church and I'm hearing the preaching and there's a pastor across the street and he is more of a source of life for me, right? This is a place where I can do better. Well, yeah, I mean, that decision is the right of every believer. And in a sense, we've all made those decisions. I wasn't always in this church. I was in another church that I left. All right, was I being unfaithful to the local assembly I left? I don't think so. I think I was being led by God. And that's happened both, not being, in greater grace to coming to greater grace. And then I was up in the Berkshires for a long time, and God moved us down here. So these decisions get made. So although I just want to be aware of the phenomenon of the celebrity pastor, there can be great reason for why we are attached to a certain pastor. Now, let me get this. I'm going to keep going with this because we're in the middle of it now. It goes back to what is the essential nature of leadership, right? What holds me up as a pastor in the pulpit, or why am I following here? And I think it's twofold, right? What holds me up in the pulpit? My great messages, that's part of it. That's part of it. But also the other side of leadership is the investment and the pastoring in the people, right? What is my investment that's going on, that's creating a relationship with me and people that's of value? And this is one of the difficulties we have, in a church when you got 1,500, 2,000 people in a church. It's not easy. How do you pastor 2,000 people? All right? If we're looking for this church to grow to 5,000 people, I think it's not going to happen, because that is not a goal that Pastor Schaller has. And I don't, and that's why we got this whole community group thing going on, which is awesome. I'm all for it. But these things come up because how do we pastor 1,500 people? Pastor Schaller cannot do it. He cannot have that type of relationship. So do we have other people in leadership who are making that type of investment that produce the life that people need and want to live? So is my leadership personal? All right? Am I keeping Ambrose in my church because he is attached to me? And yes and no. In some ways that could become very unhealthy and very dangerous, right? And in some ways it's awesome. What's the nature of that attachment? And that goes back to what is the nature of my ministry, right? Everybody get this? I'm just trying to set us up. I'm not sure why I'm talking about this, but I think it's valuable. Yeah, so I think what's behind this is to create an environment where we are operating with imperfect people in an imperfect church, in a natural sense, perfect in terms of, the blood and what God has produced in us, but to set us up for a situation where we're able to function in an imperfect situation and not have it devastate me, because looking past the imperfections to the essential nature of why I'm here and what I'm doing here, both on the side of the leadership and on the side of the congregation. Does that make any sense at all? I think it's good. And so do we want people accountable to us? Yes, but for what reason? Because of our truth, certainly because of, we have to bring order in the church, but because I'm providing them with a source of life, and that's why I want them drinking from that well, all right? And that's why when someone leaves the church, the pastor is always going to say to himself, maybe not always, but he's going to say to himself, like, is this person being led by God? Of course they're free. I can't touch a free will decision. But if I have a discernment about this person, that they're making this decision for the wrong reason, and they're going to put themselves into a situation that they're not going to do well in, do I step in and say something to them and warn them or counsel them or talk to them? And if I do talk to them, do I get accused of exercising, control, the wrong type of control over people? All right, and that's just the life we live, and God leads us. And I think those decisions come in all sorts of ways. If someone's been coming to the church 2 months because they're church shopping, like they do in Geneva, and then they make a decision to go somewhere else, well, have they lost anything? I have no idea. And then the other side of it, to be honest with you, if a person is a church shopper, if they can't grow into a call to a local assembly, I don't want to start using tricks to keep them around. You know what I'm saying? But the other side of it is, the longer someone's been here, the more knit they are into us. Like what is going on here? Like, why are you making a change? Help me understand, because I love you and care about you. If we can do a better job, tell us. But if something's happened to you, why is this happening? Help us understand. But then, of course, if when I don't know if you remember the environment back in the 70s when leaving Greater Grace was like a huge deal. That was like not an easy thing to do. I went to Bible college for 1 year, 1976, 77, and then I decided I was going to go to university, which I did. Was that decision from God? I have no idea. I know my family was totally freaking out. I know I was freaking out at Bible college, and I made a change. And there were a couple body members that came to me and said, "What the heck are you doing?" But I went to Dr. Lewis. I said, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to go to college." He said, "Okay, do me a favor, just talk to Pastor Stevens." So I grabbed, talked to Sally, whoever the secretary was, and grabbed Pastor Stevens on his way into Grace Hour. So up at Schermerhorn, those of us remember that. "Pastor, or maybe coming out of I forget what it was. Pastor, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to leave." Okay, this is what happened. All right. God bless this young man and keep him. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. That's exactly the response from Pastor Stevens that I got. Okay, so that's been my experience with this ministry. All right, that's what I know about this ministry. The free will decision wasn't questioned by the leadership. Questioned by well-meaning body members, questioned by me, but not questioned by the leadership, right? And then I went somewhere else, and 4 years later I came back, and nobody said a word. "Hey, great to see you again. We wonder what happened to you. Wonderful to have you." That's how it went, all right? But maybe it could go a different way. Maybe there'd be times when the council would be different and should be different. But this is just, see, it's not just the local assembly why I'm talking about this. It's also the affiliation. And we're going to get to that. But this is where these thoughts are coming from. It's the first time I've talked this way with some of this stuff. I'm not sure it's coming out the best. But I'm just trying to set ourselves up for a few different issues. Succession, which is a new pastor, and then affiliation. So these principles are very important. People in the local assembly do want they want security in a local assembly. All right. number one, am I safe here? Or am I being exposed to church members who will use and abuse me? Who's protecting me from that? Who's helping me with this? Number two, related to that but different, who cares about me? Is there somebody that really cares about me? Pastor Stevens, everyone who's in your head, speaking to pastors, needs to be in your heart. Jack Hiles has a sermon, and it goes like this. The highlight of the sermon is he talks to some lady after a church service. Why do you come to this church? You know how Jack Hiles plays it up. Do you come because of the great preaching? No, Pastor, that's not why I'm here. Do you come because of our awesome chapel? No, that's not why I'm here. Do you come because of our great outreach? No, that's not. It just goes. You know how he goes on and on with it. If you ever heard him preach, that's how it goes. And the lady says, after all that, the lady says, no, I'm here because of the moist spot in the corner of the eye of the pastor. All right? And everybody wants that. Do people care about me here? What's the leadership's disposition towards me? So that's care, right? So we got protection, care, and then definition, right? I think that's another security. Like, where are we going? Someone tell me this. What's happening here? And these three elements. Maybe there's a fourth element that you could come up with. Again, this is new material, but these elements are in place in proper proportion. All right, in proper proportion, and that's the ministry we have and why we're here. Ultimately, Jesus is the head of the church. His plan is perfect. Men are imperfect, but the church is perfect, and he's going to glorify himself in this church. And those thoughts are going to get us through difficulties in our churches, which will arise. It is inevitable that these things will happen. And if, just look at your life and how it's gone and the experience you've had. This is just how it goes. And instead of trying to spare us from that, we do the best we can. But instead of trying to, that's what we talk about in this course, is preparing us for these times and how it's going to go, because it may or may not go well. But maybe if we do certain things, we can make it go better. Okay, so let's get out of here. Let's grab something in the cafe, sit in on the staff meeting in probably half an hour. So I'll grab the mic and say, let's go back to class. All right.